We're in the midst of sorrow. You can see her looking down. Another day, tomorrow will bring. You hear the voice of reason telling you this could never be done. No matter how reality seems, just hold on to your dreams. When things around you crumble, no, you don't have to stumble and fall. Keep pushing on and don't you look back. Be optimistic. I know the storms ain't dry. Cloud up your outlook. Oh, Lord, just be there. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to another episode of Life with Shenita. We thank you for joining us for a wholesome conversation about why it is important to vote and why voting matters. I am truly excited and honored to have a wonderful panel of individuals who are passionate about exercising our rights to vote, to making sure that we understand the process, to make sure that we are registered properly. So I am going to, without further delay, bring these amazing individuals in and allow them an opportunity to introduce themselves to you all. So if you would, bear with me as I bring them in. Good evening, Miss Dozier.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Miss Crook, good evening.
Hey, everybody, and thank you so much. I'm excited to be here as well.
Yes, so happy to have you. And Mr. Stewart. On mute. There we go.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you're listening to us. Hello.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. And Honorable Representative Glanton.
Well, thank you so much, Shenita. It's certainly a pleasure and a humble honor to be here with you, and as well as my colleagues on the panel tonight. And thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to jump right into this conversation because it's that important. And I know it means a lot to each and every one of you all, as it does to those who are watching us this evening. So the first question that is on the table is, why is voting important? Why does it matter? I know there's probably some people out there who've never voted, and they probably are wondering, does it really matter? Does my vote count? And I would like for each of you all to take a minute or so and answer that question for me. And we're going to start with Ms. Dozier.
Absolutely. Your vote is extremely important. Basically, it's the way that you have a voice. It's the way that you make sure that the issues that are important to you are heard, and you put someone in place to represent what is important to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Ms. Crook?
My motto is you have not because you vote not. So if you want to make an impact, if you want to see change, particularly in your neighborhood, then go and vote. That's why I feel it's important, because it's easy to sit back and say, they need to do this, they need to do that. But what are you doing?
Amen. Amen. Mr. Stewart? Hank? Hank Stewart? Representative Glanton?
Well, thank you. And I would simply say that voting is a sacred right. It is a right that must be exercised, and especially now. It could not be more critical than it is right now. And voting is the opportunity to have a voice in who represents you, who make the decisions that affect your everyday life. The people who are elected will make decisions based on every aspect of your life, whether we're talking about education, taxes, healthcare, and many, many more issues.
Awesome. Mr. Stewart? I would
Look,
like for you
I
to
don't know.
tackle that question.
I don't know anything that voting does not affect. Everything in your life, people don't, I mean, crossing the street, the street walkway, somebody you elect an elected official for, healthcare, entertainment, food, anything that you do, the right to vote is the one right that protects all other rights. And if you lose that right to vote, you have no other rights. That's why muting people's voice, like ex-felons and things of that nature, you're really taking their right to their presence and who they are, because the right to vote is the one right that protects all of the rights.
Absolutely. And, with that being said, I am sure that there are individuals out there who really think that their vote doesn't matter, and they may have voted for years and then they decided, well, I'm not voting this year. What would you say to that person to encourage them to actually vote? And wherever you guys would like to answer that, what would you say to that person?
Okay, I would jump in. I'll say this. I say this all the time. If your vote didn't count, why would somebody spend so much time trying to keep you from voting? When somebody breaks into your house, your vote is valuable, right? When somebody breaks into your house, they ain't breaking in stealing the napkins. They're not breaking in stealing things that has no value. They're breaking in to steal the electronics, the jewelry, hopefully some money, but they're not going to steal the paper towels. You know what I mean? So when you look at the folks who are trying to prevent us from voting and steal our votes, it's because they know the vote matters. And it's again, I'll probably say this throughout the night, it's the most important right that you have.
Absolutely.
Well, it's also been often said that a closed mouth can't get fed. And if you don't take the opportunity that you have to exercise your civil right to vote, then you're basically saying, I don't want to be fed. Our forefathers fought for this, blood, sweat, and tears, died for this, hung for this, hung for the right to vote, so that you and I could have a better future and a better life than they had. That's why it's important, and that's why voting matters.
And this is Terry. I would like to add to that by saying that many people look at the national platform, but your voice starts at the local platform, your local communities, where your tax dollars are being allocated. Something as simple as that makes a great impact. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just look around. Just take a look around where you live, where you shop, where your kids go to school, where you are employed. Just take a look and see what your voice is or is not doing.
Absolutely. And I want to just kind of go backwards a minute because I wanted to make sure that the audience know who they're talking to. And if you guys would do me the honor of introducing yourself really quickly, starting with Ms. Dozier, tell them who you are and what you do and why this conversation is important to you on a professional level or a personal level.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shauna Dozier. I am the Elections Director for Clayton County Board of Elections. We have roughly 200,000 registered voters in Clayton County right now. It is very, very important that you exercise your right to vote. And it's important to me because I'm in a position to ensure that eligible voters have the option to vote. So I take that position very, very seriously. And if there's anything I can do to help you in your process, by all means, please let me know. I'm happy to serve.
Awesome. Ms. Crook.
Yes, my name is Terry Crook. I'm the only legal crook on this call. And I am a motivational speaker. I am a career coach, a host, and I am here because as president of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, the Metro Atlanta chapter, our national chapter is located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, of which I was a charter member, or shall I say I am a charter member. And we are heavily engaged in helping to promote the knowledge of voting, or just for people to just get out and vote. Okay, we are really out there in a virtual manner, working with other organizations to get the word out to vote. So that's why I am here representing the organization as well as the various communities that we serve as a team.
Thank you. And I'm a member of that wonderful chapter as well. So we're honored to have you. Mr. Stewart.
My name is Hank Stewart. I pick up trash on Tuesdays and Thursdays and every other weekend. Every other weekend, and I make sure your trash is gone. No, I'm a poet, writer, author, the president of the Stewart Foundation, founded by Gwendolyn Mason and myself. Just a servant, man. I'm just honored to be on the streets and trying to do the work that that our Father has put me on this earth to do, and that our ancestors have done and fought so viciously to protect. So yes.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Honorable Mike Glanton.
Well, thank you so much. My name is Mike Glanton. As she said, I currently serve as the state representative for House District 75 in the great state of Georgia. And I have been in politics for a little bit over 15 years and have served in the Georgia House of Representatives for that period of time. I will also say that I'm retired military. I am a United States Army veteran, and my platform and my actions are oftentimes related to military veterans, their families and such. And so it is certainly an honor. It's important to me, especially not just from a voting perspective. In other words, people voting for me, but it's also important to me because it identifies the people that I'm going to have to work with in order to be an effective voice for you and others around this great state. So that's why it's important to me.
That's a great point. And as we continue this discussion, this important discussion, Ms. Dozier, where can voters go to get more information on local or state, and this may be State Representative Glanton, you may want to answer this one as well, local and state amendments that may be on the ballot?
Absolutely. So the best place to go and get information about voting is the Georgia Secretary of State's website and also your county local elections offices. I know that a lot of people are on social media. However, sometimes people share things that may not be as accurate. So I always strongly suggest that voters or anyone that's seeking information about voting, go to the county elections offices and also the Secretary of State's website. Also, one great tool that we love to use is the Georgia My Voter page. With the Georgia My Voter page, you can look yourself up. You can get your precinct information. You can get your sample ballots. You can download your precinct card. You can also learn who represents you and get all of your district information. If you vote absentee by mail or participate during early voting, you can also check your absentee status on your My Voter page. So we strongly recommend the Georgia My Voter page, the Secretary of State's website, as well as your local county elections office to get information about voting.
Absolutely. And the only thing
Shenita, can I jump in real quick? Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
Because that is she just hit a website that I know by heart. We should all know that mvp.sos.ga.gov website. That's probably one of the most important websites that you will ever, because what Ms. Dozier just said, you can go out there and check it and make sure that you haven't been purged. A lot of us don't know who our state representatives are. All that makes you a smart person. That particular website makes you know and even more informed. I know it by heart. I posted, matter of fact, I posted it again today. mvp.sos.ga.gov. I sing it like I know my phone number 449. Anyway, but I say it as much as I possibly can.
Absolutely.
I'm going to type it and put it on the screen. So share it with me again. My voters page.
MVP like the most valuable player. .sos.ga.gov. It's the most. I promise you, I post at least 5 times a week. You know, it's the most important website that for voting, especially as Georgians.
Awesome. And one of the things that she said is you want to check to make sure your information is correct. I had a friend who moved from one place to another, but his license had one address, and he went and made the change prior to this election so that he won't run into issues. Is that something that you advise people to do? Make sure that you check and make sure that there's no hangups, there's no mishaps, there's not anything that they can hold against you and say, well, you're not that person.
Absolutely. It is very important to make sure that you check your status. If you do have a name change or address change, go ahead and provide the information to us, and then also go back and check to make sure that it has changed, and it has not changed. Then you can contact your local county elections office to ensure that you get it changed prior to election date and the voter registration deadline. Now, sometimes, just like we've had in Clayton County, we recently had a September special, and that was associated with a voter registration deadline. And so sometimes when counties have elections, they have to pause on processing applications until that voter registration deadline and until that election has passed. So it's very important to go on that My Voter page and continue to check. There's 24-hour access to the My Voter page. So I do definitely encourage you to go and do that.
And Shenita, if I might add something, the thing that in regards to the amendments and explanation of the amendments, I would suggest strongly that you reach out to your state representative or your state senator, because those amendments and referendums that are on the ballot for November the 3rd is legislation that passed through the General Assembly. So no one would be able to explain it better than the legislators who voted for it and ultimately passed it. And so that would be my only add to what Ms. Dozier has said, is to reach out to your local, to your state and senator and your state representative to get explanations.
Awesome. Because
may I add something too? For those persons, there are many people out there who may be in a position like I was. I relocated here from Florida. So when you see your ballot, you would like to know who you're voting for. And I would just like to suggest ballotpedia.org, ballotpedia.org. It's a nonprofit organization located in Wisconsin that has put together, it's a nonpartisan organization that puts together information. You can go in and read the bios and the platforms of the various candidates. And they also have links to the pages that Ms. Doja talked about, as well as Representative Clanton. So it's a very awesome resource for you, for those who need to research the candidates on the ballot, particularly if you've relocated to a new area.
Awesome. Great suggestion.
And that's so important, because we have a tendency not to vote down the ballot. And a lot of times we don't vote down the ballot because we're intimidated by the ballot. We don't know when it's time to, the president, usually the governors, those are, we get so many ads and so many people are talking about, we understand those, but when it gets down to the sheriffs, the judges, the school board members and things of that nature, we're intimidated by those. And those are the ones, it's almost like you really should vote up the ballot, right? It really is almost like you should start, because local politics is so important. So it's almost like you should start at your school board, your sheriff, your county commissioners, or your city council, your state representative, state senator, and come up, because those are the ones who's going to affect you the most.
And for those listening that vote down the ballot, the items listed down the ballot are usually those items that are not national. They're usually local, and they're using that term for you to go and be sure you're looking further down the ballot. Make sure you're covering everything. You're very knowledgeable about everybody that's on that ballot, up and down.
And I agree. It's so important for us to make sure we do our homework so that we're not intimidated, as Mr. Stewart said, because if you're intimidated, you'll just bypass that opportunity to vote in that category. So it's important. And you said that was ballotpedia.org to research candidates on the ballots. All right, great. All right, keeping with our discussion, what advice do you have for someone voting for the first time, or even a parent who has a teen that will be voting for the first time? What advice would you give them for this upcoming election?
Do their research.
Do your research before.
Do the research
Take
before.
your sample ballot in there. Yeah, take your sample ballot with you, so it won't. It's amazing. You get it in, and Terry, you start getting ready to start voting, and all of a sudden you forget who you came in there to vote for.
Exactly.
And then you start trying to remember. Look, then you start trying to remember the signs that you saw on the side of the street. Who had the most signs? That's why the signs are so important, right, Rep? Am I representing? That's why people put so many signs out, because they want to brand themselves, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're the best person. So I think you have to, you print your sample ballot out, and do your research. And then take that ballot in there with you, because I promise you, you get in there, you're like, okay, then you start voting for the incumbent when you should be trying to get the incumbent out, or put somebody else in, or keep the incumbent in, because it's a lot of information. It could be intimidating. So I suggest go to my voters page, like Shauna said, and print it out, do your research, and then take it in there with you. It'll make the process so much easier.
Yes. Our next question is, what have you as an individual or an organization done or are doing to educate the citizens about the voting process, or even, registering to vote? What are you doing as an individual or as an organization to continue this process to exercise our rights to vote? Yes. Terry, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, the Women of Color Empowerment Institute have been working. Many of our members are actually working the polls. They're either serving in the poll manager position, or they are just working at the polls. They are also, a part of the, we're partnered with Will We All Vote, and that's with Valerie Jarrett and Michelle Obama. And we are doing these couch parties where they have the DJ on, and everybody, after we, getting ready to get everybody ready, we're calling up friends and family members, and having them, at least 3 people, that you 3 to 5 people, to actually register to vote or say they've registered to vote and gotten their absentee ballot or mail-in ballot. And it's been a lot of fun. And so we've been doing all of that. And the chapter also put together a PSA commercial public service announcement. We recorded that last week, and we plan on posting it on social media next week about voting by mail and why it's important to vote, because you just never know. If you vote by mail, anything can happen. You just never know. So it's always good to be safe than sorry, and
Absolutely.
especially during this pandemic.
Absolutely.
One
Mr.
of
Stewart,
the things that one of the things that we've been doing for years with the Stewart Foundation is we have a campaign called the Vote for. The Stewart Foundation is a youth leadership organization, and our whole purpose from 8 to 18 is working with young people, developing the leaders of tomorrow. And so one of the things that we've been doing for years is doing the Vote for Me campaign, where we teach our young people to go out and register people to vote. And their approach would be, excuse me, Ms. Dozier, my name is Austin, I'm Milan, I'm 12 years old, I'm 14 years old. I'm a part of the Stewart Foundation. Are you registered to vote? The adult says, no, I'm not. The child says, well, will you please register so you can vote for me because I'm not old enough? Will you vote for my health care, education, against the criminal justice? So it engages them in the political process. The reason why we do that is because if the earlier we get our young people into voting, then we have to try to convince them that voting is important later on in their lives. The other thing that we've done long term is that we've gone into schools and registered voters, right? And then gave young people cords, the cords at graduation. And I remember at Cedar Grove High School, when we did it a couple of years ago, one of the young men, most of the young people in there, that the only cord they had around their neck was the voter registration cord. They didn't have an academic cord, they didn't have an athletic cord, but it was the most important cord they could wear. So engage. If we can get our young people engaged in this political process, the earlier we can get them in there, the more important. That's why I encourage parents. I went to the polls with my mom and my dad when they were young. I wanted to stand behind the booth, and you wanted to be a part of that. And I think so often, because we don't engage our young people, they have no buy-in. They don't have any stake in the game. And as parents, we got to do that. So the earlier you can do it, the better off we are with our children. The earlier we can do it. Young Caucasian kids a lot of times are engaged in that process. Even state representative, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go down to the state capitol, look at all the kids who are paging. They are getting them. They're grooming those kids, getting those kids ready to be state representatives, state senators, lobbyists. And so our kids, we lock them out of that process, and then we get mad because they don't do it, and that's because we're not engaging them early enough.
You're absolutely right, Hank. And I will say on that note, both the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, as well as the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, have done very, very good work in making sure that we attract our young African-American and other folks of color, giving them an opportunity down at the Capitol to be pages and interns as well. But let me say this, that what I've been doing is what we're doing right now, and that's being visible and sharing my voice, my thoughts with those folk that may have some doubt about the importance of voting. And also, as a member of the House Democratic Caucus, as well as the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, we have collectively worked very hard throughout these election cycles to make sure that our constituency know how important it is for them to vote and to be engaged in the political process.
That's awesome. I can honestly say that when my youngest daughter was in high school, she had the opportunity to serve as a page with you. And, those conversations that need to be had in the homes around the table, we need to encourage people to get back to doing those kind of conversations, talking about politics, why it's important, what's the process, understanding the importance of it all. So I appreciate each and every one of you for what you do to advance this along.
And I would like to just interject and just talk about some of the things that we're doing in Clayton County Board of Elections. But even before I start that, just piggybacking off of some of the things that have already been said about getting involved in the process, we are strongly recruiting student poll workers because we do want student poll workers to get involved early at the age of 16. They can become a student poll worker. I actually served as a poll worker in college, and also being an intern, serving as a page. A little known fact about me is I was an intern for the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus before. Yeah, so what we're doing in Clayton County to try to make it as COVID-free or contactless friendly as possible. We are installing official absentee ballot drop boxes around the county. In addition to that, we are adding 7 additional polling locations. We're splitting some of our precincts so that we can reduce the lines on election day. We've identified that Clayton County voters still like to vote on election day. And so we're doing everything we can to reduce the lines on election day. In addition to advanced voting, we're adding additional advanced voting locations. So we're going from 6 advanced voting locations to 7 locations. We have a Sunday voting day on October 25th for the November general from 12 to 5. Also, the last week, which is when most of the voters come during advanced voting, we extend our hours into 7 p.m. However, if someone is in line, as long as they're in line by 7 p.m., they will be allowed to vote. And so these are some of the things that we're doing to have contactless service. Our poll workers are wearing face masks, face shields. They're behind PPE barriers. There are stylists that we're giving to our voters. We're wiping down the ballot marking devices. So if anyone wants to come in and vote early, vote in person, these are some of the things that we're doing. And also the additional drop boxes that we're putting around the county in order to have COVID-friendly or contactless service in the county. And we hope that our voters utilize these services as the many options that they can use in order to cast their ballots.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm a proud Clayton County citizen. So thank you and Representative Glanton for all the work that you're doing. And I know personally how hard our representative works and has been working since he was elected in 2006. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we thank you for that. And just to continue on, as an elected official that you are, what can you, or can you, I'm sorry, what can you say to the citizens, or what do you think they need to know in regards to their responsibility in voting? What can you say to those citizens right now?
Well, I think one of the most important things that I can impress upon folks in regards to why it's very important and necessary and crucial for them to vote. And I'd say this, if you don't want to vote for you, vote for your family, vote for your children, vote for your community, vote for those things that impact and affect those around you that you love. And so while there are many, many reasons, I believe that you ought to vote for yourself. If you can't bring yourself to that, vote because you love those around you. And so I think it's extremely important that organizations such as the one Ms. Crook is talking about, organizations, we've got to go beyond the education and awareness. We've got to go beyond the registering people to vote. And we've got to be very diligent in our efforts to get them to the polls. That's the most important thing. We have, I think, Ms. Dozier, just in Clayton County, over 200,000 registered voters. But yet to date, we only have about 33,000 people that have requested absentee ballot. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't go out and vote in person on the day of, or early voting or advanced voting. But certainly this is an opportunity in light of COVID-19 that we ought to be taking advantage of these absentee ballots and getting them in as soon and as early as possible.
I know some people don't trust the mail-in the absentee ballot process, is there something that you can say to that person, Ms. Dozier or Mr. Stewart, to help them feel comfortable with that process?
Absolutely.
I just want to go back. Oh, go ahead.
There,
No, go ahead.
there
Go
are
ahead, Ms. Dozier. Go ahead.
things that, thank you. There are actually a couple of things. Going back to the My Voter page, you can track your absentee status on the My Voter page. Also, there's another option for you to actually now track your absentee ballot by mail through the entire process, and I can provide you with that link so that you can register and track your ballot through the entire process. Also, you can always call our office in regards to your absentee by mail. In addition, with the absentee ballot drop boxes, we're required by law to have 24-hour surveillance on those ballot boxes. And so we do have access and we do have surveillance on those drop boxes. In addition to that, we're also required by law to pick up for the first week. We should pick up every 72 hours. However, in Clayton County, we pick up every day from each of the ballot drop boxes that we're going to have. And so we're trying to do everything that we possibly can to make voters feel more safe with this process. And if there's anything additional that we can do, we're also doing that. And even if a voter doesn't feel safe with dropping their ballot off in our official absentee drop boxes, you do still have the option to bring it into our office. You cannot take it to your polling site, but you can hand deliver it to our office as well. So there are several options that voters can use. You can still put it in the mail. It's about 50 cents for the ballot to be mailed. You have the drop boxes, and you can also bring it into our office. So we're trying to do everything we can to make voters feel comfortable with using the absentee by mail process.
Awesome. And Mr. Stewart? Unmute.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to make sure you don't hear any feedback. But I was going to say there are several phases that I think we have to understand about voting. And I learned this years ago from Reverend James Orange, who was a big time mobilizer for Dr. King. There's 4 phases to this thing. There's voter registration, there's voter education, there's voter mobilization, and then there's accountability. And if you don't do those 4 phases in the process, then we're sending dangerous people to the polls. If you don't register first and then educate people and then mobilize them and then hold elected officials accountable, it's all for naught. If you take one of those phases out, you have a weakened and a flawed system. If you register and don't educate, that's dangerous, sending somebody to the polls who doesn't know, because they're voting for, they might be voting against their own best interests, right? If you register, educate, and then they don't go to the polls, or they don't take the opportunity to vote, then it was all for naught. And then if you register, you educate, you mobilize, and then you don't hold elected officials accountable, then it's all for naught. And I think when you look back over the process of why we're in the situation we're in, because most people don't vote in every election. We don't vote, we might vote in the main election, the presidential election, but we don't vote in the midterm or the special election or the runoff, or and all these other things. And you get what you got. I'm in a school district that we just got a new school board member that has 80,000 residents in that district, and it was determined by 7,000 votes. How in the hell can 80,000 people in a district and only 7,000 people come out and vote? So 7,000 of us determine what the fate for 80,000 people, right? And we don't go back. I'm in Congressman John Lewis's district in DeKalb County, and so how do you not go through that process and vote, for something? So I just really want to motivate our folk to understand, the same way we learn so many other things, the same way that we learn sports and golf and everything else, learn the process, learn voting, learn the process of voting and the ballots and candidates, and understand the political process. A lot of people, and I'll mute on this. I remember when President Obama was elected to president, and this woman said in Chicago, she said, I'm glad he was one. Now he can make sure they get the snow off the street. and they can push these trash cans, make sure these trash. That's not his job. That's your alderman. That's your city council person. And so if you don't understand that, and then you start getting mad at people and think that, then you hear President Obama didn't do anything. Well, but you hold him accountable for getting the snow off the street. That's not his job. And so if you gotta educate people. So it's voter registration, voter education, voter mobilization, and then accountability. And I hate that we're taking civics out of schools. And not only is it not in schools, if it is in schools and it's a conversation, it's not taught by somebody who has that passion for it, who really wants the children to understand that process.
Unmute yourself.
I said a lot.
Representative Glenn. No, you're good. There we go.
Okay, so I would simply say this, and I've had a lot of communications with folks who have said that they're not going to vote because their candidate of choice is not on the ballot. Let me just say this. When you do not exercise your right to vote, you just voted. You just voted for status quo. You just voted to say, I'm okay with everything, or everything, whatever happens doesn't matter to me. That's what you just voted. And so I would prefer, in my case, whether my candidate was on the ballot or not, to find a candidate that's most like my ideas, my philosophy, my principles, my fundamentals, to try to do the best I can to salvage what I have. There's an old saying, you play with the cards you've been dealt. And so not voting, you have no dog in the fight, so to speak.
Awesome. Ms. Crook.
And I'll say this, there's no perfect candidate. There's no perfect candidate. I don't understand why we're expecting a perfect candidate. There's no perfect candidate. And I said this to somebody the other day. I was on a radio program the other day. I said, when you went out to buy your house didn't have everything you wanted. It just had the majority of the things that you wanted. There's never been, even building a house, sometimes people don't have everything and they built the house. Or, when somebody buys a car, the car doesn't have everything. The car gives you the majority of the things that you want. Sometimes even when you pick a spouse, the spouse don't have everything that you're looking for. It just has a lot of the right things that you're looking for. You know what I mean? So why are we holding our candidates to be perfect when we don't look for perfection in anything else, not even in ourselves?
That's a great point. I say register, educate, make sure that you are going to the polls to vote, and hold your candidate accountable. I agree with you 100%. I think when we talk about mobilization, we have to make arrangements and make sure that people are able to get there. They're able to have transportation. And I'm sure, Representative Glanton, I'm sure there are some things that you guys are doing in this county to make sure people that need to get to the polls are getting there.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm very impressed with is what some of our ministries have been doing over the course of the last couple of election cycles. And that's not just encouraging their congregations to go vote, but actually providing transportation for them to vote. And so I appreciate that, and all the efforts of all the organizations that are out there making sure that people have access to the polls. And I think that's extremely important.
I'm just going back to what Mr. Stewart said about 80,000 people in a district and only 7,000 people came out to vote. That is disheartening. And so it really kind of tells you where our mindset is and, how we value this process. And so we've got to go back, I think, to the kitchen table in our homes and make sure the things that we were taught, the examples that we were shown, we're paying it forward to make sure that our children and our grandchildren understand the importance, and their friends understand the importance as well, because what we teach in our home may not be taught in our children's friends' homes. So I think we have to go back to some of those old-fashioned things that we know that truly does work, and make sure that we are paying it forward. Would you all agree?
You know, most of us we will do everything that's important to us. If you know, there's some folk I say, you know, if I gave you tickets to see Beyonce an hour before the show, you will find a way to get to that show if you didn't have transportation, because that's important to you.
Yep.
You'll find a way. You'll find you going, and if you can get the kids settled, you can get your hair done and all that in an hour to get to, because that's important to you, right? And so a lot of times with the kids in my foundation, I make them look at videos like, you know, Fannie Lou Hamer, a piece called Winona, you know, talk about what she went through in Winona, Mississippi, or Diane Nash, or, you know, it's so many. We have an array of stories. Dr. C.T. Vivian, Al on the Prize, right in front of Bill Connor getting knocked down and hit in the mouth and getting right back up and talk about the right to vote. You know, we got so many stories to encourage our young people. We just need to put them in front of them and let them see it. You know, it's sometimes harder to understand why voting is important when you think your vote is not counting, but show them the history. You would not find a Jewish child that does not know about the Holocaust. It's not going to happen, because they're going to sit there and they're going to teach them about their history. Why are we so embarrassed about ours? And our history made America. It made America what it is. We tore this land. We did the work of this. So there's some really good stories. I really strongly suggest that you sit down and, you know, and make them look at Fannie Lou Hamer. Listen to her story. This woman was beaten to oblivion. I mean, hit in her kid. She ended up dying from what happened to her in Winona, Mississippi. Diane Nash talked about when Robert F. Kennedy. Diane Nash was a part of the freedom fighters, and they were going from city to city, lunch counter sit-ins and all of these things. And they were getting ready to go to Birmingham, Alabama, which instead of Birmingham, it was known as Birmingham, Alabama. And they were going down there, and Robert F. Kennedy called them, who was the attorney general at the time, and said, "Excuse us, y'all, please don't go to Birmingham. We can't protect you there." Listen to this. He said, "Please don't go to Birmingham. We can't protect you all there." And Diane Nash at the time, and she had to be probably 20 something years old. And she said to the Attorney General of the United States, she said, "Excuse me, sir, but we're going to Birmingham. We're going to Birmingham." As a matter of fact, last night, and we know how dangerous it is. So last night we all signed our last will and testament. They were committed. They were committed. And so we gotta tell those stories to our children. That's why you have the right to go to the schools that you're going to, work in the companies that you're working for, you know, participate in some of the athletics that you're participating. One time you couldn't be on the same field with our Caucasian brothers and sisters. So I think we're hiding our story, and we're hurting our children by not telling them stories.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I appreciate that thought. And as we, you know, are preparing to close out, because I know that this conversation really needs to be a part 2 and 3, but I know that we can't because of time. But I truly appreciate the passion that you have, as well as the other panelists, about this topic. And you're right, our history needs to be a prideful moment. We need to be very proud of our history and make sure that we are educated in that way. So as we are planning to prepare to close, I would like for you all each to share a piece of advice that you would like to leave the audience today, before we allow Mr. Stewart to close us out with a piece. But I would like for each of you all to share a piece of advice that you can leave with anyone that's watching this. Ladies first. Ms. Dozier?
Absolutely. My advice would be to anyone that is voting, go ahead and put you a voting plan together. Also, research your candidates. Make sure that you're researching your candidates with with good information. Consider the sources that you're using. The voter registration deadline is October 5th for the November general election. Make sure you go on the My Voter page to identify if you are registered to vote, your precinct information, your sample ballot, know your districts, know your district information, and make sure, and I can't stress enough, go ahead and put your voting plan together. If you know who you want to vote for already, go ahead and get ready to vote. Voting will start October 12th in person. We are mailing out absentee ballots by mail. Currently, we started mailing those out on September 15th. And so if you already know who you want to vote for, go ahead and participate in the process. And don't wait until election day to wait in the long lines to vote. Go ahead and vote now. We'll be ready for you. And we're excited about the process, and anything that we can do to help you in this process, by all means, please let us know. Our website is www.claytonelections.com. We have a lot of resources and a lot of great information on our website that can assist you in your process.
And just before you close out, will you make sure they understand if they have a ballot, and how that relates to voting in person, the conflict, because there's a lot of conversation around the absentee ballot as well as voting in person. So will you kind of clarify that for the audience?
Absolutely. So the absentee ballot by mail is a paper ballot. Now, during the primary election, we did have voters, because of COVID-19, request an absentee ballot by mail. And then we opened up our polling sites, our early voting polling sites. And so those voters decided to come and vote in person. There is an extra step that you'll have to go through in order to vote in person if you have requested an absentee ballot by mail. One, when you come in and you check in, if we see that you have requested an absentee ballot by mail, you're either going to have to surrender that ballot, turn that ballot into us, or complete what's called an affidavit. You have to sign saying that you either lost the ballot, it's been spoiled, or you did not receive the ballot. Once you do that, we have to call the elections office to verify that we have not received that ballot back into our office, because in accordance to Georgia election code, once we receive that ballot back in our office, it is deemed as cast. Therefore, you will not be able to cast another ballot in person. And so there are several checks that we undergo in order to make sure that you have not cast a ballot prior to going to vote in person. And so it's important to know that if you do change your mind about voting absentee by mail, you can. However, there are going to be extra steps that you're going to have to take in order to make sure that we have not received that ballot back into our office just yet. So just know that and be patient with the process, and understand that there's going to be extra steps to make sure that we protect ourselves and we protect you in that process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ms. Crook?
Yes, and I was going to talk about that process, but what I will say is this. What Ms. Doja first said to you about that process, and she said it may be a long process, but let me tell you, she's being just so humble, because they have made this a smooth process, and it doesn't take long for them to get you to sign that affidavit and switch it over. So if you are thinking it's going to be a headache, rid that from your mind right now. Rid. Okay, they got it down to a science. All right, so kudos to you all for that. And I would just suggest that have conversations with your friends about voting and how important it is, and maybe you all can encourage each other. Go early vote, okay, and go to the polls together, okay, or mail your ballots together. Just say, hey, on this day we're all going to mail our ballots together. All right. And then celebrate it, celebrate each other doing that, because this is so critical. But be creative with it. All right. Be creative.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Representative Glanton, would you share some parting words for the audience before we allow Mr. Stewart to share his piece?
Did here. Can you hear me now? Okay, well, I would simply say this in my closing remarks. If you care about redistricting, your vote, because this is the time that the maps will be redrawn in this state to determine who will represent us for the most part for the next 10 years. This is extremely important. If you care about healthcare, and you care about Medicaid and Medicaid expansion, you'll vote. If you care about equity and equality when it comes to fair housing and affordable housing, you'll vote. If you care about schools and education, if you care about prescription drug costs, if you care about hospital closures, you'll vote. If you care about taxes and fees and the environment, you'll vote. If you care about transit and transportation and equity and economic development, you'll vote. In other words, you have to understand that you need to be the change you want to see. So it's been a pleasure to be with you this evening, and I encourage you all, go to the polls.
Absolutely. And I just, before Mr. Stewart shares this piece, I just want to encourage the audience to not only vote, but complete the census. And I want to make sure they understand how important that is to their county, their cities, the funds that will be allocated for the next 10 years in those areas, how important, because so many people don't understand that piece. And the census is important. Complete the census. With that being said,
Count those babies. Count those babies.
Absolutely.
They need to be counted too. Everybody in that household, count them. Big mama, everybody, count them.
Absolutely. Wherever you were on April 1st, it needs to be counted. So with that being said, thank you all again for being a part of this very important conversation. I'm sure that something that was said and shared will continue to make an impact as we prepare for this November election. October 5th is the deadline, and so please check your status at the mvp.sos.ga.gov. And with that being said, Mr. Stewart will carry us out with a piece. Mr. Stewart, I think you're muted. There you go.
I'm sorry. All right. I'll say this, if as parting words, if you never come face to face with the devil, you and him must be heading in the same direction. So make sure that you ain't on the wrong side of it. You hanging out with the devil and your decisions on, but anyway, this piece is a piece that was written in reference to, and I'm gonna put my John Lewis hat on. He gave me this hat when he was sworn, when they had a whole fleet of ships Navy ships named after him. And this piece that I'm doing is in reference to Congressman John Lewis, Dr. C.T. Vivian, Dr. Joseph Eccles Lowry, Ms. Rita Samuels, people who have really fought so hard for us to be where we are right now. And we shouldn't let that go. But this piece is simply entitled, Accept. What are you giving me? What are you putting in my hand? What you're giving me has just altered, it has changed my plans. Why are you looking at me like that? There's this look in your eyes. Am I even qualified to accept this? Will there be a ceremony? Do I need cap and gown? Need I be baptized? I know you're tired. I know you deserve rest. How can I say no with all that you've poured into me, all that you've invested? I'll take it. Okay, I'll take the baton, I'll carry the torch. You've earned the right to relax, the right to sit on the porch. I accept the baton and all the responsibilities that it holds. I accept the challenge to stand tall and bold, to fight for justice, to stay on the wall. I'll do what needs to be done. Yes, I accept the call. Integrity will stand with me, even if we have to stand alone, to speak truth no matter who's wrong. You fought the good fight. You completed your assignment. Pass me the baton. Our souls are in alignment. I'll sacrifice my body just like you. I'll stand or kneel against racism, sexism, discrimination, regardless of the hue. I'll get up early and I'll stay up late. And when it's my time to be tested, just like you, I won't take the bait. I accept the baton because it's my turn. I accept for all of our ancestors who were beaten, raped, those who were burned. I accept because before midnight, December the 31st, 1862, our ancestors, they were praying to God on their knees. I accept for all of our ancestors who were hung from those trees. I accept because dogs and water holes didn't turn you around. I accept because our ancestors spoke up and spoke out, even when they didn't know the language. They didn't know a person, place, or a thing was a noun. I accept because at the bottom of that bridge you were beaten and left for dead. Broken bones, tear gas, blood dripping down your head. I accept because you sat when you had tired feet. I accept because the only way we could walk into that hotel was through the back door, and it was only to cook, wash dishes, maybe on the bed, change the sheets. I accept because America was built on the land that our ancestors toiled. I stand because our ancestors' blood fertilized these soils. So if it rains, I stand. If it's hot, no fan, I stand with the weight on my shoulders, but the foundation that I stand on makes me bolder. I stand for those who didn't get a chance. I stand for those who died because a white woman said at me he took a glance. I even stand for those that look like me, but they had forgotten. Although our ancestors were side by side in the fields picking cotton. I stand for seniors. I stand for children. I fight for one. I advocate for millions. I stand for those ancestors who dreams of freedom they would hold fast. I stand for so many of our ancestors who died for this country and the flag was never flown for them at half mast. I stand for those living under bridges, sleeping on makeshift pallets. I stand because our ancestors knew our voice was in the vote. It was in the booth. It's on the ballot. So yea, do I walk through the valleys and the shadows of death? It's about others now, no longer about self. Give me the baton I carry with pride. I won't let the torch burn out. The baton hit the ground even when I'm tired. You've trained me. Now I'm one of your descendants. I take the baton from my ancestors. So one day I can pass it to our descendants. I accept. Do you?
I accept. Thank you. I accept. And I thank you all again for sharing your wisdom, the knowledge, your passion on this very important topic. And I hope that as many people as possible that can vote will vote. If you're not sure, then I hope that you will take the time to research and make sure that you are eligible to vote and that you do exercise your right. So thank you again, audience. Thank you again, panelists. You guys are amazing. Mr. Stewart, that poem will be forever in my heart. Thank you for sharing. Yes. And you all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.